Wow, I can't believe we're already here again. Honorable mentions for 2021. Let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? This is Sean of Raw Select Music. Today I want to get into my honorable mentions of 2021, followed up very quickly by my best of the year shortly after the release of this video. So for my honorable mentions today, I wanted to shed some light on some records that I thought were really, really good that just barely missed out on my best of the year list. And a lot of the entries in my honorable mentions for today would have ended up in my best of the year had it not been for the fact that two artists in particular, Tall Black Guy and Kiefer, released multiple projects this year, and it felt a little bit weird to stack the list with multiple projects from the same artist. So I had to make an executive decision, decide which albums were gonna go where, but I will state that on any given day, my opinion might change, and that the albums that appear on my best of 2021 list could be swapped out for records that appear on my honorable mentions list. But anyways, I thought these records, albeit flawed, are still worth checking out, so I wanted to give them a little bit of attention before the end of the year. And yeah, with all that being said, let's get into these guys. So right off the top, we got Children of Zeus's Balance, an album that when it was announced, I was really, really excited for and was really kind of hoping that they would go back to that sort of retro meets modern R&B meets hip-hop sound that they had showed off on their early singles and showed a little bit on their previous album Travel Light, but didn't seem to focus on as much as I personally would have. And what I got was seemingly an album that was leaning more towards a modern sound and less in the sort of vein of the sound of Children of Zeus that got me interested in the first place. Now, all that being said, I think Tyler Daley and Connie Khan are excellent lyricists, vocalists, rappers, what have you. I think they do a great job on here. I think some of the lyrical content on here is fantastic, as well as being insightful and emotional. But ultimately, I still think this album is mired by some truly just nothing beats that really don't do them any favors. And that's why I really talk so highly about their early singles as being so outstanding to me, because the beats were just so much more interesting, and that mix of old meets new of their earliest stuff just doesn't really seem to be a factor for them anymore. That being said, what is on here is still really good, definitely worth checking out. I think this is an album that will probably grow on me the more I listen to it, and there's still definitely some highlights on here, particularly the song No Love Songs is one of my favorite tracks of the year, and definitely one of the best songs in their catalog, as well as a whole handful of other tracks on here that I think are also really good. But compared to the other albums that came out in 2021, it just didn't stand out enough for me to put it on my end of the year list. But still want to shout it out, still want to tell you, you should probably go check it out. And yeah, Children of Zeus Balance, still worth a listen. So yeah, do that. So next up, we got an album that I picked up very early on in 2021, and that's Epiphan Overstand, released on Stone's Throw. This was an album that I was really, really excited for initially. I love the idea of marrying electronic music with live music, and Epiphan do a really good job of mixing IDM and drum and bass and ambient music with some huge jazz overtones. So in terms of creativity and originality, this album is definitely worth listening to. But much like last year's Rejoicer album, I do find that it is just a bit too airy, and there is an intangible aspect to it that keeps it from being as memorable as I'd like it to. But all that being said, it still doesn't take away from there are some really, really cool tracks on here. The second song in particular, like Vu, is this super mellow, slow shifting ambient jazz track that really stood out to me the first time I heard it, as well as the ambient outro on here, Pulse 420, is definitely one of the better ambient soundscape tracks that I've heard this year. But in between that, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of like, okay, that's cool, but it really didn't leave a long-lasting impression on me. All that being said, I still think it's cool. I still think it's worth checking out. There's a strong chance that you're going to like this project more than I did. And for all those reasons, as well as it just being an interesting standout release from this year, yeah, Epiphan Overstand, definitely an honorable mention of 2021. All right, next up, we have one of the two albums that Miley Manzanza released this year, Crisis and Opportunity, Volume 1. This is a cool project. Miley Manzanza still shows off that he's an extremely accomplished drummer and an extremely versatile drummer, and does all sorts of styles on here, mixing in bits of hip-hop and just straight-ahead jazz, as well as little bits of broken beat on here. Basically, any style that he decides to tackle, he does it extremely skilled and extremely confidently. I think the only thing that holds me back from liking this album more, because truth be told, there isn't a weak track on this short little LP, is that it's just missing that one little special point that makes it a standout jazz release to me. Whereas some of the other albums that I've heard this year have that one little hook that makes it stand out above the rest, this really just doesn't hand it. And it kind of feels like a pretty solid, if not kind of standard modern jazz release to me. And if it sounds like I'm being negative, I'm not trying to be. I'm just saying why it didn't end up on my end of the year list. But from front to back, from Bigger Deal 2, Bigger Deals, Portobello Superhero, Brixton Blues, London, and the absolutely gorgeous closer on here, Crisis and Opportunity, there really isn't a weak moment on here. I just wish it had that one little extra thing to it to make it into my end of the year list. So if you haven't checked this one out, definitely do so. And I highly recommend that you check out Crisis and Opportunity 2, because it seems like it kind of goes in a slightly different direction, and it might actually address some of the things that, well, I guess for lack of a better word, bother me about this release. So super cool album. Definitely dig it. Definitely worth checking out, and definitely an honorable mention of 2021. All right, now we get into the two albums that probably could be on the best of the year list, but I had to make an executive decision on where they were going to go, and I didn't want to put multiple entries from the same artist on the same list. That just kind of felt ridiculous. And after all that being said, I'm putting Kiefer Between Days in my honorable mentions list. And this one hurts me, because in all honesty, I actually enjoy this more than When There's Love Around. Kiefer has essentially addressed everything that I had a problem with on Super Bloom, in that these are probably some of the most straight-ahead hip-hop tracks that he's done outside of Kicking It Alone, and they're easily some of the best. Melodically strong, Kiefer is coming off as being more and more confident with his soloing. It's becoming more lyrical and more beautiful. His drums hit a lot harder. The collaborations on here, absolutely fantastic. Specifically, the track that he did with The Count is just, beautiful. But ultimately, it's not a full project. It's just an EP. And that's so frustrating, because if this were like an actual album project, I probably would have ended up putting it on the list. All that being said, this is a fantastic record. It's definitely Kiefer at his most inspired, his most lyrical, his most beautiful. I love the fact that he's playing around in a variety of different genres on here, be it soul, jazz, funk, hip-hop, ambient, and even a little bit of IDM shows up on here. And everything on this album is memorable, impactful. There isn't a wasted moment on here. It's probably one of the tightest projects that he's released to date, and it's probably my favorite project from Kiefer, aside from the one that's going to be on the Best of 2021 list. So if you have not listened to this, definitely grab this. Definitely probably the most highly recommended album in this honorable mentions collection. So yeah, this is absolutely essential listening, and definitely worth your time. This last one's just going to come down to preference, because honestly, I absolutely love it. And that is Tall Black Guy, Ozzy Moore of Process and Progression. So I think when it comes down to it, I just prefer Tall Black Guy, if not doing a fully instrumental project, keeping the vocal features to the bare minimum, because I buy a Tall Black Guy project because I want to hear his creativity on display. And it is definitely on display on here, But you've got the added texture of Ozzy Moore providing vocals and raps over this project, which he does a great job, to be fair. He rides over Tall Black Guy's instrumentals effortlessly. His lyrics are very thoughtful, very thought-provoking, and very emotional. I think there's some really, really cool moments on here. And there's no shortage of absolutely fantastic vocal features on here, including Kumbaya on the track Viberite, which is one of my favorite songs on here, as well as Running Away with Malia, who provides a bit of emotional heft to Tall Black Guy's already emotional instrumental. It's just, honestly, I kind of prefer his other project. Nothing else bad to say about this. At the end of the day, I kind of wish that there's an instrumental version of this. That's just sort of the way that I lean with hip-hop these days. But what I got from here, I still really, really dig. Highly recommend that you give it a listen. And I also highly recommend that you listen to the other projects that Tall Black Guy released this year. Decide for yourself which is your favorite Tall Black Guy release of 2021. So that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching. If you've listened to any of these records for yourself, please let me know what you thought about them down in the comments. If you want to hear any of these records for yourself, please head over to my WordPress blog, because that's where I post music links to any of the records that I talk about on this channel. And make sure you head over to my Twitch channel, Raw Select Music Sean, for Live from the Record Room. There you can hear me play records like the ones that I talk about on this channel, as well as a whole host of records in my collection that I don't get a chance to talk about. Links to everything, as always, down in the description. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks as always for watching, and keep a lookout for my best of 2021 video, which should be coming very soon. But until then, peace out!